Hey, what is going on, guys? In today's video, we're doing a full tier ranking of every single weapon that exists in Project Nexus, which is Chapter 1, Season 8, and we'll be focusing on regular games. So I want to get out of the way that we're not going to be ranking certain guns that only exist in late game. So, the flintlock pistol does not exist in normal games. In fact, I haven't even seen it in late games, although it did historically exist in Season 8. We will not rank the infantry rifle, as the infantry rifle only exists in late game. We will not rank the tactical SMG, as that only exists in late game. And we will also not rank the drum gun, as although that doesn't exist either variant of the game, after the Unvaulting event, it did exist, but it doesn't exist in Nexus currently, so we're not going to rank it. And with that, let's quickly go over the tiers. So X tier are those absolutely dominant, game-breaking weapons. Think the drum gun at the start of the season, in a Season 4, start of Season 5, the compact SMG at launch, the combat after the bugs got fixed at launch. These guns are insanely busted and are just completely game-defining. You really don't want these to exist, and they really should be nerfed if there is a weapon that does exist in this tier. S tier, I consider S tier to be a weapon that honestly I'd still argue is a little bit too strong. A great example of that right now, I'd argue the purple gold pump shotgun is in that tier. It's a weapon that still defines the entire meta. Other guns really struggle to be competitive. It's just a weapon that's very strong in its class. A tier I consider to be weapons that are still really solid. They don't need a nerf by any means, but a lot of people want to get them. Think like the Scar. I don't think very many people think the Scar should be nerfed, but it's definitely a powerful weapon and works great in a lot of situations. B tier are still those just good options, right? Standard AR, gray through blue. No one really has a problem with the standard AR. It's not exceptional, but it's not bad either. If you're carrying green AR into late game, that's totally fine. C tier are just those kind of guns. They're situationally can be pretty good, but they're not amazing by any means. They work fine early game, but late game, you probably don't want these anymore. And then D tier are the guns that are just not good. Think like standard pistol. These work early game, but you really don't want these by mid game, so you want to get rid of them as soon as you can. And then F tier is the joke tier. Think like the crossbow, the original fully automatic sniper, the semi-auto sniper when it did 40 damage. Like, these guns are just absolute jokes to the point where you could genuinely make an argument in certain situations the pickaxe is a better option. And with that, let's start out with the shotguns. So, as I said previously, I do think the purple gold pump shotgun, which I'm going to call the Spaz, is in the S tier class. It's just a very powerful weapon. It's not as broken as it is in Season 7, but it still draws pretty fast. It does a devastating amount of damage with 110 body, and you can one-shot people. I'd argue it's still a tad too strong. It's going to be hard for other shotguns to compete, per se, without also being insanely strong. It's just a really competitive option. Outside of some edge cases, like high ping and in duos or squads, you basically need to run the Spaz. If you're solo, you need to run the Spaz. If you can find it. It's just incredibly powerful, and that's just really how the meta goes. The green and blue pump shotgun I still think are overall great. The green pump is not as good because you can't one-shot people, and you can't one-shot them to the body early game with only 95 damage. So I'd say overall the lower rarity pumps kind of average out to A tier. Still a great option. There's no issues with running green or blue pump into the end game, but it's not quite to the level of the Spaz. The tac shotgun I'd say is B tier. It's not a bad weapon by any means, but relative to the other shotguns, well, really only the pump, it's just not quite there. With the shotgun delay, if you shoot, build a wall, shoot, as I've said over and over every weapon ranking since Era Season 5, you are restricting your rate of fire to be almost as slow as the pump, so the whole purpose of the tac is defeated. It draws slower than the pump. It's fine early game, but it's just not particularly competitive against anything other than maybe a green pump. Let's move on to the ARs now. The standard AR, I continue to put in B tier, and the Scar, I will put in A tier. Look, they're both really great. They're well-rounded, versatile weapons. The Scar is a step up because it does take one less shot to eliminate someone from 100 to 200 health. These are great weapons. They work in all situations, close, medium, long range. They're reliable. They don't need a nerf by any means, but they're solid weapons, and there's nothing wrong with them. I think we all know these two pretty well. The silenced AR, I would say, is B tier. Still a very decent gun. It does a little bit less damage, but you have much better bloom when you're going slow and tap firing, but if you full auto, the bloom is terrible. So it's better at long range, but much worse at close range. It's a good option. I wouldn't say it's quite as good as the Scar, but it's still perfectly competitive. There's nothing wrong with it. The heavy AR, I think, is a bit divisive. I'd honestly say that this is a gun that if you use L2, can be incredibly powerful if you have very good aim on keyboard. But if you full auto spray it, you don't use L2, you don't have the best aim on keyboard. It just doesn't work that well. I'd overall say it's a B tier weapon right now. It can be really good in the right circumstances when you get those first few shots on target. But full auto spraying is terrible. The DPS is overall pretty low. It's not as good as it was in Season 7. I'd say it's a decent option in B tier. The Scoped AR I'd say is C tier. The Scoped AR did get buffed in Season 8 to 26-27 damage. That helps. I don't think it's up to B tier yet, but it's just okay. This actually probably is a gun that would work a bit better on keyboard. Yes, you can L2 with it on controller to a degree, but that's very hard to do as you literally cannot see anything. For the right player with good scoped aim on keyboard, yeah, this could be a viable option. I think it's just kind of okay. And the thermal I would overall say is D tier. I just don't think the thermal does enough damage to really make sense. 37 damage is nothing crazy, and the DPS is very low. I think you're better off running a sniper if you want high damage at long range, or just taking a normal AR if you need DPS. I just don't think this thing does anything well. It's just not very good. I don't think it's so bad, though, that it's in the joke tier. Next, let's move on to the SMGs, which there's only two options, the silenced and the compact. And simply, I think they're both B tier. The silenced SMG has a little more DPS, is a little more accurate, reloads a bit faster, but the compact SMG has a bigger magazine and a higher rate of fire, meaning more likely to leak shots through walls. I think both are competitive. You could go either way. You know, for me, I slightly favor the silenced SMG. I know people that think the P90 is better by far, and I know people who think the silenced SMG is always better. They're both competitive. Just pick whichever option you like. They're both solid. Neither of them are overpowered. Overall, there's an interesting choice there. Moving to the pistols, starting with the standard pistol, I think that's a D tier weapon. Taking 5 shots to eliminate someone early game from just 100 health, not very good. This thing is just not good. It's got a lot of bloom. It works early game. It's, you know, you can get a kill or two with it, but you don't want to keep this thing long term. The silenced pistol, I think, is C. It's a step above. It situationally can actually be decent, but I don't think it's particularly amazing, as it doesn't do the AR role really better than AR. It's not a better SMG than SMG. It's kind of this hybrid-ish gun that just does each of them okay. It's not terrible by any means, but not amazing either. The dualies, I think, are bordering on entering B tier. My one gripe with the dualies is the draw speed is really slow. So if you go pump to dualies, you're taking a long time to get that follow-up shot. An SMG would be a lot faster. So I think they're actually really solid early game when you don't have a shotgun. They kind of work as a shotgun replacement. But as you go on with the game, I think you're better off running a dedicated SMG if you want that spray weapon. I think they're C, maybe a C+. I could see an argument for B, but I just think that draw speed holds them back a bit. And then the hand cannon I think is B tier. It's not as good as it was in Season 6 where you could one-shot walls, right? That hand cannon was insanely strong. But this one's still not bad by any means. You can still one-shot some wood structures and, you know, brick stairs and stuff like that if they're immediately built. It still does good damage at long range. It's not a bad weapon by any means. Not exceptional, just a pretty solid option. And then finally the scoped revolver. Look, the scoped revolver is just not good. It does 44 damage, which is nothing crazy. It's just not good. If it did 50 damage, I can maybe see an argument for it being okay. But at 44, it just doesn't do enough damage at long range for you to justify it. You're much better off carrying a sniper if you want something at long range. It's kind of a similar situation in thermal AR. You know, you can either take a sniper or you can take an AR if you want something reliable. I just don't think this thing fills any real role, and it's just not very good. And if you get this thing early game, good luck trying to get someone. You're going to need to pull off a miracle to get a kill with it. Okay, let's move on to the snipers now. The hunting rifle, I think, and the hunting rifle and honestly the silence, just talk about them together. They're both B tier. The hunting rifle shoots a little faster, and doesn't have a scope, so it might be a little bit better at close range. But the silent sniper does a little more damage and has the scope at long range, but a slower reload. Both of them are competitive. You can go either way. They're both good, solid options. They're not broken by any means. They're just both good. The heavy sniper I do think is A tier, though. It does a lot of damage. Like 157 body shot is ridiculous, right? Yes, the reload is slow, but because it has the utility to blast through into someone's box, I think that alone is enough to push it up to A tier. It's a very strong sniper, and, you know, it has utility at long range and close range, so very good weapon to have. The boom bow I would kind of say is most like a sniper. Yes, it kicks shotgun ammo, but it doesn't play like a shotgun. It plays most like a sniper. It's B. I think early game it's very oppressive and probably is A or even S in early game. But by the end of the game, once you have mats, I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. This thing is overall really strong early game because all you have to do is hit splash damage. You can one-shot someone from 100 health. I think that's a bit too busted. But again, as builds start coming in, it's not like you're one-shotting freshly built wood or fully built wood walls. It's not really a structure destroyer. I think it's just B. It's a solid option, but I don't think it's actually that broken outside of early game. Finally, let's move on to our structure destroyers. So we have the RPG, which RPG I still think is A tier. I'd almost want to push it down to A minus these days, as the reload has been getting slower and slower as seasons go on. However, I still think the RPG is an A tier weapon because it's just very powerful at close range. You can use it to combo with shotguns. You can break someone down. I just think it's a pretty easy explosive to use. I'd put it A tier. With the grenade launcher, I think the grenade launcher in some ways can be spammy, yes. But in some ways, it can be more difficult to use because at close range, the grenade launcher actually isn't as useful as you might think it is. You want to be in that optimal range where the grenades are blowing up right on your opponent's builds. So in that sense, it can be sometimes more difficult to use. Sometimes you can just spam it and get lucky, but sometimes you spam it and nothing happens. So I think it is a B tier option. It's good, but I think the RPG is overall better as, with the RPG, you just throw it at someone's builds that are a few tiles away from you, blow it up, and the job is done. Grenade launcher, you can't quite do that, so I think I put it overall B tier. And then finally, with the minigun I think is B tier also. It's a good weapon. With the change to where it overheats but it winds up faster, I think that's overall a buff. I think that really helps the minigun be more responsive. Use it to spray for a few seconds, cover for your teammate pushing, and then you push on yourself, right? It's just a genuinely good option. It's not insanely good like it is in later seasons once it gets buffed a little bit more, but I think it's definitely a good option. So, just to sum up now, shotguns, you realistically only want to run the pump. In terms of ARs, I think the standard AR, silence, and heavy AR are all viable. SMGs, kind of that follow-up class. You have the 2 SMGs, but you could also kind of run the hand cannon as a follow-up option. And even the dualies or silence pistol could work if you really like them. Snipers, honestly, all 4 of them are viable. Heavy sniper, I'd say, is overall the best, but the hunting, semi, and the boom bow are also competitive. And then for structure destroyers, you could run RPG, grenade launcher, or minigun. And with that, I hope this video was helpful, and I'll catch you in the next one.